So, Dan, as per the title of the podcast, we're both film fans. So, what's a movie that you've really enjoyed that you've seen lately?
Of course, Brent, movies are something that we must treat as our bread and butter.
Yep.
The movie that I have seen recently is Uproar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We had a fantastic Q&A screening here on Tuesday, the 3rd of October.
Mm-hmm.
We screened it with the director, Paul Middleditch, and Sonia Whiteman, who's the screenwriter. A little bit of history to that relationship. Sonia and I have been friends since we were about 14 or 15.
Right.
And she actually lives in Sydney with Paul, who's her husband.
All right.
And they've been living in Australia for a long time, and I haven't seen her for ages. And it was so lovely to catch up with someone whom I got on with really well as a kid and into my 20s and hadn't seen for a while. And it's, you know, when you see people who you've known for a long time, you just snap back into it. It's really easy. It was very cool to do a Q&A screening here at the cinema with someone who's an old friend. And you know, the stage from being teenagers sort of knocking about, you know, hanging out, and then actually, you know, here we are as adults and, you know, talking about a movie that your friend has screenwritten in the cinema that I own. You know, it was just a really nice experience. We had a really great crowd here for the Uproar Q&A. We introduced the film, and then I sat in on the screening because I hadn't yet seen it, and those two, of course, have seen it a million times. So they popped off to the wonderful Vintry and had a bite to eat and a glass of local beverage. The film itself is beautiful, in one word. Julian Dennison is one of the leads. We know him from Hunt for the Wilder People. There's James Rolliston, who made his name in the film Boy. There's Rhys Darby, of course. Say no more. Rhys is on. Is Rhys in every TV show and movie at the moment?
I think so, he is. He's a busy guy.
He's a busy guy.
And a local.
Interestingly, and I always thought this was an interesting choice, Minnie Driver's in the film.
Yeah.
And I haven't seen her in a film for a while. So, and I'll talk a little bit about her as I sort of work through the cast, because I do think it's worthwhile touching on two or three of the key cast members from this film. Julian Dennison is known as the sort of the comedic young Kiwi actor. He was in the Deadpool films as well. He is incredible in this film. He is. It's not just a step up, it's several steps up. He is clearly a very, very good actor. And what I love about it is that it's almost like you're seeing Julian Dennison discover his roots, let alone his character's roots on screen, because it's very much a New Zealand story set in 1981 around the Springbok Rugby Tour, where there was a 3-month rugby tour and a whole lot of protest around what was going on back in South Africa, and why is that rugby team coming to New Zealand when there's apartheid going on in South Africa, which is essentially sponsored racism from the government. And it's set in 81, but it absolutely feels really fresh. It feels like a 2023 movie, which on the one hand is great because it lifts up all these themes for people to witness on screen now, but it also is slightly depressing that this stuff is still going on, you know?
Exactly.
But it also translates beautifully into something that's going on overseas, but very much a New Zealand story. And honestly, Julian Dennison is so good in this movie. It's unbelievable, the step up he's made. Not that I didn't think he was a good actor, because he definitely has the comedic chops, but in this film he feels like he's really grown into becoming a great adult actor, and I think it shows that there is a big future for him in more dramatic roles. Rhys Darby, we often, you know, we know Rhys personally, and you talk to him and he sounds like often his characters. You're like, wow, you're just talking just like, you know, this character. But in this movie, he has a really great, rather than outright comedy, he's got a beautiful nuance to his performance, and it's something that you don't always see from him, and I think he does an incredible job himself. James Rolliston, it feels like quite a bare bones role. You almost feel like he's talking about what he's been through personally when he had the world at his feet after Boy, and then he had that terrible car accident. You can see the mark in his throat. They make it obvious from where he had a pipe in his neck from the accident he had, the scars on his leg. And it all gets tied into the character he's playing, which is Julian Dennison's older brother, who's recovering from an injury, who used to be the first 15 captain.
Right.
And then Minnie Driver is a total revelation. I guess I'd never really thought too much of Minnie Driver's acting, but that's probably because I haven't really seen many films that she's been in.
Been a while.
And it's been a while, and she plays the mum of Julian Dennison and James Rolliston's characters, and she is amazing. And that's the thing, all of the key actors and actresses blow it out of the park. And then the film itself, I found it in the first act, it was a little bit sort of on the nose and slightly light, and then it just built and built and built like a great album. Not a single, like not a pop single.
Yeah.
It felt like you were really going on a journey through the film. And at some point some points in the movies, I was definitely getting a bit wet in the eyes. I think there was some water coming off my brow.
Yeah, must have been, yeah. That would have been maybe one of your snacks. It would have been, yeah.
I think when I was drinking my water, it sort of splashed up into my eyes. Yeah, I just
of
had
course.
to wipe it out. Funnily enough, it was in both eyes. It's a really emotional film. It's beautifully done. The script that Sonia wrote they've clearly put a huge amount of time into it. They said it took about 7 years from start to finish.
Wow.
They've worked really hard on it. The cinematography is stunning, great on the big screen. It's definitely a big screen movie. However, I can see it becoming a huge part of that New Zealand film canon that people keep revisiting. Great film. Yeah, I loved it. Absolutely loved it. And the audience as well. Mainly an older audience. I would say most people were in their 50s at least, if not their 60s. And the first comment I made before the Q&A started at the end of the film was, wow, what a wonderful film. And the hum from the audience was, oh, yeah. I mean, that was, and there were a few tears. I think a few people ducked out as soon as the screening finished.
Yeah.
Highly recommend it. Please come and see it. It's a film that I think you should see, let alone go and see for entertainment purposes. You must see this film.
Well, I think it'd be good because for me, 1981, I was still at high school, and I remember all this going on in Auckland, and everything at Eden Park, and that. So I'm really looking forward to seeing it. So that's going to be good.
Interestingly, it's set in Dunedin, and Paul, as director, he was asked from the audience, how did you get hold of that old police car and those old uniforms, and where did you find the little pockets of Dunedin? And he's like, well, actually, we took some old shots from on the hills looking down at the beach in the city, and the only difference was now there's an IKEA building. It looks almost the same as it did in 1981.
Amazing.
And some of the blocks they used where there's some sort of protest scenes, they didn't need to do anything. They just needed to, make sure there was no one in the background, and the buildings look the same. It's in places a very old city, and it's got a definite look and feel to it, and it still has very much the same look as 1981.
So out of 10 Jaffas?
9 Jaffas.
Wow. 9 Jaffas.
Yeah, a must-see
big recommendation.
New Zealand film. Yeah.